For today's episode of Postcards from the Fringe, I'm crouched here on the side of the beautiful Pioneer River in Mackay. And by the looks of it, we've got another absolutely phenomenal thunderstorm about to roll in, similar to the one that struck when we were doing the Marlborough to Sarina stretch the day beforehand. So looking out across the river here, just off into the distance, the other side of the river is a suburb called Folden. But back about 120, 130 years ago, there used to be a section of the river just over there called Folden Crossing. Now, a rather remarkable story was published in one of the local newspapers just before the turn of the century in the late 1890s that talked about a ghost that supposedly came from a drowning death that had occurred at Folden's Crossing. Now, it was a rather interesting story, to say the very least, published in the paper. But what we'll do is we'll have a bit of a look at the story first, and then we'll go on to see if there's any historical basis behind it. So let's go to the story first.
The 11th of last December, I spent picnicking at a place called Slade Point, and I came home so tired that I was in bed before 9 o'clock. About midnight, I awoke and lay for a long time wondering why sleep should forsake me after such a day's toil. The door, as usual in North Queensland, was wide open, and I could dimly discern the far wall and the curtain at the foot of my bed. Soon I became conscious of a figure standing before me, a figure of a lady or an angel, or perhaps both, with the most beautiful face imaginable, a mass of luxuriant golden hair and light blue eyes overflowing with tears. She was robed in a kind of furry blue wrapper, just low enough at the neck to reveal the rising bosom. Instead of being alarmed, as you might think likely, I gazed rapturously at such transcendent beauty, until, after a short time, I noticed a sea of mist or water rising around her. Higher, higher, and higher it rose, as it seemed to cover the mouth and nose. The sad blue eyes gave me such an agonised look of pitiful appeal that I leapt forward as if to save her, and found myself kneeling upright in bed with a river of perspiration running down my forehead and my heart beating like a battery. For a few moments, I asked myself whether I was dying or going mad. But before long, my fears vanished, and although my heart was still giving audible notice of its action, I almost longed for my beautiful visitor to return. Sleep was out of the question unless a fitful doze towards morning, and at the breakfast table, when, after a strong glass of whiskey and soda, I narrated my story, they only joked about it. That day, Monday, was a public holiday here, and at about 4 o'clock, two young ladies, aged 19 and 14, were accidentally drowned at Folden Crossing, 3 miles above the town of Mackay. I knew neither of them, and therefore soon forgot, to a certain extent, about the sad occurrence. On the following Saturday, while passing a photographer's studio in the main street, I caught a glimpse of a face in the window, which immediately nailed me to the spot and held me as if spellbound. There, looking straight into my eyes, was the likeness of a young lady in whose face I had distinctly and unmistakably recognised almost every feature of my nocturnal visitor. After gazing at her as I did in my dream for a long time, I interviewed the shopman and asked, "Please, who's that young lady in the middle of the top row?" "Ah," he said when he found it, "that's poor Bella W., one of the girls drowned on the holiday." "Thank you," I replied, in a voice which trembled in spite of myself, and needless to say, I went home in deep thought. Now, considering that I had never seen or heard of that unfortunate girl, don't you think that my experience partakes of the nature of the miraculous? Can you or any of your readers offer an explanation of such a mystery? I might add that since the occurrence above narrated, I have visited the grave of Miss W, and I'm not ashamed to confess that on that occasion I cried the bitterest tears of my life.
So having come a little ways back from the Pioneer River, where we were just behind the Mackay Base Hospital, and we haven't driven particularly far. It's only probably 800 metres up the road, a kilometre, not even a kilometre up the road. And we've come to the Mackay Cemetery, which is an absolutely beautiful cemetery just before the CBD in Mackay. My great-great-grandparents are buried not far behind me, so a bit of a special cemetery. But we've come here to see if we can get to the bottom of the Bella W drowning crisis apparition story that was published in the local newspaper. Now, when we have a look at the details that were published in the paper, we don't have a great much to work on. We do have Folden Crossing being a drowning, and we do also have the supposed name of Bella W. Now, when we have a look through the newspapers, other local newspapers from roughly around the same time, we do find a story that involved a drowning. It was actually a double drowning. Now, the local storekeeper, when our author said that she recognised the photo, said that there had been a drowning of two girls, one of them whose name was Bella W, and it had occurred at Folden's Crossing. Now, when we have a look through the newspapers at those kind of details, I'll just pop everybody down here for a minute. Okay, we come across an article in my handy notebook that was published in the Western Champion and General Advertiser for the Central Western Districts on the 19th of November 1895. Now, this is only literally a month or so before our other published article about the crisis apparition. And this article was titled Drowned at Mackay on Wednesday. Yesterday, Miss Isabella Walker, Bella W, aged 19, a daughter of the teacher at the Te Kawai State School, and Miss Margaret McClanachan, aged 14, were drowned at the Folden Crossing of the Pioneer River. Miss McClanachan got beyond her depth and Miss Walker lost her life in an ineffectual attempt to save her. So quite remarkably, we have Bella W, Isabel Walker, involved in a double drowning at Folden's Crossing. So we definitely know that there was a double drowning at Folden's Crossing, and it aligns with the story that our author is telling us of this apparition that she spotted in her house and then identified from a photo in a local shop window. Now, the reason that I've walked you through here is that right here in Mackay Cemetery, if I turn the camera around, we actually have the grave of Isabel Walker. So it says, in loving memory of our Belle, Isabel Edith Walker, of the State School Te Kawai, drowned at Folden Crossing the 11th of November 1895, aged 19. So there you go. Now, did Isabel Walker's ghost appear in the house of a stranger? We shall never know, but the details are actually quite incredible. That this lady had spotted an apparition in her bedroom. She didn't know who it was, and then days later was actually able to recognise a photo of the girl who had drowned at Folden Crossing, and all of those details do align. So quite an incredible little anecdotal story of a ghost, nearly 130-year-old ghost, 125, 130 years, that exists here in this beautiful city of Mackay. So what I'll do is I'll throw this one again over to the local paranormal group. I think Mackay Paranormal Investigators, this one's over to you to do a bit more investigating. And in the meantime, if you've liked this video, make sure to hit the like, share it amongst all of your friends, especially if you're in Mackay. It's a great little story of your city. And we'll catch you tomorrow for the next episode of Postcards from the Fringe. Thanks all for joining us.